Hi, good morning, and welcome to this ZP Developer Zone webinar. So we like to do this on quite a weekly basis, and today's the 31st of December, and we're just going to cover some questions regarding monitoring soil health. So I'll essentially jump straight into it and go forward. Okay, so as I say, this is a weekly webinar. Today's the 31st of December, and we're today covering, well, I've titled it here, things like carbon capture, soil nutrients, and soil pH. The thing that I'm primarily going to be thinking about really today is soil nutrients and soil pH. Capture is the soil carbon capture, I should say, is the kind of is the ultimate goal of ZP and other people to really kind of help with this kind of climate crisis through really precision farming and using farming also as a sort of sponge for the excess carbon that's in the atmosphere. That said, let me go forward a little bit quicker and just say at ZP, we're all really about measurement and almost chemical measurement. So that could be spectroscopical using optical spectroscopy. It could be electrochemical. That's one of the things that sort of really makes ZP, let's say, stand out. We're also very good at continuous monitoring as well. So some of us have a very long history in continuous monitoring in what's called CGM, continuous glucose monitoring. And if you've been following ZP, really since 2019, you'll see that we've also done continuous monitoring of nitrate in the soil. The thing that I can talk about today and that we have in the public domain is today we're talking about discrete measurements in matrices like water and soil. And I won't be talking about continuous measurements in soil, though I know people are very interested in it. This is something that just at this, at least at the end of 2023, that is not in the public domain, and we're not in the public domain, but we're not necessarily releasing it. So what we have then is at ZP, we have the SensiAll platform. I'll give a lot more information on this. I'll also say that there's a webinar on this in January 2024, at the end of January 2024, so approximately 3 or 4 weeks from now. But the SensiAll platform, I mean, we have a nitrate sensor for it, we have a phosphate sensor for it, we have a potassium sensor for it, we have pH, we have ammonium, we have urea, we have calcium. I suppose the history to this is because at ZP we do a lot of sensors for human health. So when you look at phosphate and potassium, well, actually, let's start with potassium. It's the easiest one. Potassium is actually a very measured, let's say, sensor or analyte, I should say, in human health. Similarly, ammonium, urea, and calcium. And so what's happening at ZP then is that we're able to take our kind of ISO 13485 contract development, contract manufacturing skills and reposition them into this kind of precision agriculture. And then with the addition of nitrate and phosphate, then we have the kind of NPK panel, nitrate, phosphate, and potassium. So the background today I'll be talking about is really discrete soil measurement, but it's not just the instrument. We're also talking about a complete sort of system in terms of sensor to cloud, but I will illustrate that a little bit more as I go forward. So this is the SensiAll platform. It's a very small handheld device. It has these sort of LEDs on the front. These LEDs really sort of guide that user experience. So this is much more akin to a kind of a consumer type experience rather than a sort of typical laboratory experience, which I think is probably important because really for this technology to be useful, it can't be in the hands of scientists. It has to be in the hands of environmental engineers, or it has to be in the hands of agronomists. So we need that kind of much nicer sort of user experience. And the user experience with this includes things like LEDs that kind of guide the user to the status of the machine. Most things when you turn them on, they get an LED to show that they're on. Simple things like that. The fact that the device has Bluetooth connection, the fact that it's transmitting data, etc., is all covered like that. I mean, the ZP philosophy I've been sort of building the background to this is there are people in this world who could benefit from measuring NPK, nitrate, phosphate, potassium, urea, ammonium, calcium, pH. Now all these sensors that I have listed are actually just part of the general ZP portfolio, and I'll give that in a bit more detail. But there are people who would benefit from measuring these analytes, and there are people who would like to actually help these people measure these chemicals or analytes because actually it can improve possibly the usage of them or possibly the outcomes of a particular process. So for example, farming is really a process. if you can't monitor the inputs, it's very hard to kind of control the outputs. And then you do lead to issues like obviously if you can't measure the nutrients in the soil, people are just going to add more nutrients. And if you don't think that there's not an excess of nutrients going into, for example, agriculture, then really where is all that kind of pollution coming from, in the sort of rivers and lakes, and the eutrophication where the algae bloom, the oxygen drops, and the fish unfortunately die. So there is a problem and it needs solving. So what we try to do at ZP is put enough of the technology blocks in place that people can really serve this problem very quickly. So today I'm talking about SensiAll, a little handheld device. It has these sensors on it, and it can, with some work from the, when I say from work from either the company that's engaging in us or the academic group that's engaging us, with some work of them on that SensiAll platform, then it can be starting to roll out to the people who can really benefit. One of those reasons is because it is cloud enabled. So from day one, in a minute, if you've got an Android phone, there'll be a QR code coming up, and you'll be able to scan that QR code and actually install the SensiAll app. Because immediately the device is cloud enabled, so that actually the data can go up to the cloud and then come off the cloud to the particular people who would benefit from that data. So there's a really quick connection between people in the field and then people who could actually analyze that data. So the farmer, for example, would get a real result for urea on their phone or ammonia on their phone, but you would also get the raw data as well. And then by analyzing that raw data, by the way, there's also an API, an application program interface on it. So especially companies, there'll be many companies building up dashboards where they want to kind of serve the data in a particular way that's meaningful to their particular customers, even in the correct language or the correct regional settings. So there's an API built into that, an application program interface into Julie. The fact is, you as the either the academic group or you as the startup company or you as a more established company, you will actually get that raw data via the cloud. So the farmer or the user will get the results, but you will actually also get the raw data, which means you can actually start to, I say, work on the accuracy of those results. Because for every application, there's sort of there's the application itself, different water types, I want to say, but I want to say with things like complexity of soil types, each soil type might actually need a different sort of algorithm essentially to kind of offset interferences or offsets that come from the soil itself. There's also the sampling. If you were trying to do a discrete measurement on soil, some soil will bind its nitrate very heavily. Some soils, the nitrate, if it's sandy, for example, the nitrate won't be bound so heavily. And then you've got algorithms that need to sort of tie all this together. So an algorithm really is a way of extracting results that the farmer wants from the raw signal. So you have both things really. You have the raw signal, and then you're able to actually then sort of work on, is the number that I'm getting or giving to the farmer actually accurate enough, or do I need to do some work on the sampling procedure, or the algorithm, for example. So there's still some work to be done, but this is a very quick cycle, I would say. So often the sort of, I should really put a slide up that sort of describes a traditional cycle where you do a lot of work and then eventually the farmer might actually get assistance to start testing. Here actually they get it very early, and you're allowed to kind of iterate almost sort of in real time, and this is really a lean startup philosophy. There's a sort of a philosophy of doing product development, so everything's absolutely perfect. And one day you give it to the end user, and actually the end user says, "Oh, it's not what I want." That's not really an efficient philosophy. So we have a kind of a very sort of lean philosophy of give people minimally viable prototypes very early on, so that actually they can test them, give you feedback, and you can improve it. That said, so I've got some videos here playing of various aspects of this system. In the top left-hand corner, I'm actually showing how the sensor goes in. It's very elegant. See, there's no trying to put a sensor into a slot, which is a bit of a problem with some products on the market. Though this one just sort of slides straight in there. Very elegant, very small form factor. In the other video, one of our engineers is going to run some samples, and then she'll actually show the results are actually then essentially, once the results gone on there and the test is test is run, the data goes up to the cloud. The other one here is a QR code. So though I might talk about NPK, nitrate phosphate with potassium, for every analyte we could generate a new QR code, and in fact the system can keep it expanding. So this one unit has a very kind of elegant expandability associated with it as well. So ZP, we do have a lot of electrochemical biosensors. As I say, most of these have been invented for human health. But if we were to look at sort of soil health, we have a redox probe, we have a pH probe, we have a chloride probe, we have a potassium, we have calcium, sodium, phosphate, nitrate, ammonium, urea, TAS. I think TAS, total antioxidative status, is could be a good way for measuring actually soil health. I think there's three ways of measuring the oxidation state of soil. There's redox itself, there's TAS, total antioxidative status, and there's also FRAP, ferret reducing something. But it's a way of measuring the redox properties. So I would actually suggest that TAS is actually the best way of doing it. And we do have a TAS sensor from ZP. So for soil health, I think measuring one analyte is useful for actually measuring a host of analytes, and then essentially correlating them with soil health is probably the way to actually do it. But for every application, there are challenges. So what we give at ZP is a minimally viable prototype through the SensiAll. This is something that you can actually give to end users. But I would also say that there is always some work to be done. There's certainly nuances, especially in these kind of complex samples or complex applications. We do have a webinar on this on the 24th of January. We do one in the morning, one in the evening our time. That allows people from all across the globe to sign up for at least one of the webinars and essentially not to be left out. There's no exclusion. And I put a link here to that webinar, so hopefully you can register for that webinar. Just a small matter. We also do a conference on the commercialization of electrochemical assays, and that will be in the UK in June. And I'll put a quick link to that also as well. Just to say that the SensiAll platform that I've been discussing today, there is an Android app out there. That's a sort of distribution app. So if you scan this QR code of an Android phone, you will find the app. And then you'll find that actually the app wants to know what assay you want to run. And it does it by looking at QR codes. So there's chili here, there's ginger here, there's nitrate here, and there's TAS here. So here's a few of the examples of the apps that you can, the sensors that you can run today on that particular app. This is a video of one of our engineers actually running a nitrate assay. So if I was to describe it, we have a nitrate sensor. We describe this as our Gen 2 nitrate sensor. We have our SensiAll hardware, which I put here. We have our app. Our app tells the meter what to do. The SensiAll app, that was that QR code earlier on. And the app actually connects also to Julia as well. So the sensor goes into the meter. The sample goes on the meter. The meter tells the app tells the meter what to do. The meter gives the data back to the app. The app shares it with the Julie cloud, and we get a result. But also the cloud is then also is also sending the raw data. This is an important part up to the cloud. So that means you can actually look at it yourselves, and you can also share it with others. I don't have many slides on Julie today, but Julie's been in development for 9 years. It's on its second iteration in terms of complete rewriting of the code. So it's pretty powerful cloud system, specifically designed for this kind of data. So I think it's the only cloud in the world. Just to describe sort of nitrate monitoring and what's actually happening is that you can end up with sort of multiple sites. And so you can have instruments at multiple sites, but they're all cloud connected, which really helps with the kind of logistics of getting hold of data, because all those multiple instruments will connect to Julie. And each one of those instruments actually has a unique, what's called a MAC address. When you're doing field testing, you can have essentially plots in a field. You can go to the plots and periodically test. And because as long as you map out the field and sort of give it, plot 1 to plot 18, for example, as long as you put those plot numbers into what we call the cluster name, essentially the software will also help to manage or organize your data. So here, plot one, cluster name, they put plot one, sample ID and operator ID. So sample ID will be, by the way, when the sample ID goes up, and there'll also be a timestamp as well. So you get a time date stamp, the sample ID, which you put the cluster name. It's good if you keep that consistent, especially, and it maps to this map, because then you can actually you can treat each plot differently and actually sort of get all the data in one place and not have it all mixed up, and you later on have to sort of reorganize it. So it does a bit of file management for you. Similarly here, if you put plot 2 in, and the other data, and similarly here, if you put plot 3 in, then that will also go to the same, go to a very distinct place. And then, for example, you do it for all of them, and you could do it on plot 18, and it would go to a very distinct place. So I'm kind of saying that you can map a field out, you can have plots in a field, as long as you create what are called clusters, and each cluster represents a plot, then all that data for that particular cluster or plot will go in the same location, and then you can find it easier later on. So if I have a cluster, if I have a plot 1, and therefore create what's called a cluster P1, all my data will be up there, my sample ID, my time and date, my operator ID as well. So it's a really nice way of, I want to say logistics, but also traceability, which I think is an important thing actually. When you think about the food chain, people really want a traceability in it. So the traceability here goes down to who actually did the test and when was the test essentially done. So in summary, at ZP, we have our SensiAll platform, and actually because of our work, historical work in human health, we do have a lot of these sensors. If these are interest, then I suspect she's contact us. But our business model is it's a privately held company, so it's a for-profit business, and so we're really looking for people who really want to take this forwards and have funding. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, thanks very much.